So, we were talking about Beast Wars as a podcast about two comedians rewatching the 1990s TV series Beast Wars Transformers. Although we are discussing a children's television show, the podcast itself is not intended for children.
We have some listener mail. Andy's son has a question for Apetimus. Dear Apetimus, how did you get so buff?
How you doing, everybody? Apetimus Prime here. Phil, the how I got so buff is pretty straightforward. Eating lots of bananas, lifting lots of weight, general, all around being awesome. But the why is more instructive. Why did I get so buff? Well, I happened to meet a couple of lowly podcasters, and I took a look at them, especially Andy, between you and me. And I thought, there but for the grace of Primus go I. There's no way I'm going to be as weak as this guy. So that very day, I signed up for a gym membership, which is when you belong to a club of really buff guys named Jim. And we all just lift really heavy stuff.
Oh, that's a really interesting story. Can I hear more about the gyms who lift? What type of facility do you all work out at?
Any place there's something heavy. You know, junkyards, construction zones. Sometimes we'll go into a building that, for some reason, just has an entire room of heavy things, conveniently set up on bars, which makes for very easy lifting. And it's odd. There are people who sit at a desk at this building, and they demand to see my gym membership. And I'm like, how do you know about this? Your name's not Jim.
Oh, yeah, that's quite confusing, Apetimus.
Anyway, long story short, how did I get so buff? I saw how pitifully weak Andy was and thought, no thanks.
Wow. I have one more follow-up question about the gyms that makes me recontextualize something you say often. When you say snap into a slim gym, do you mean that you picked up one of the thinner gyms and just snapped him in two?
Oh my gyms would be aghast at that accusation. That's what we say to pump each other up. When we say snap into a slim gym, that forces them to imagine themselves as slim rather than buff. So they could kind of go into I don't know, if there were some kind of mode that someone could go into that would reflect being in an especially animalistic or powerful state, I guess they would go into that. But I don't think there's a word for that. So they just kind of snap into it.
Yeah, there's no term for going into some sort of animalistic mode.
Yeah.
Now, I guess it makes more sense because when you say slim is good, I now hear the phrase as snap into a slim, gym.
I mean, it can be taken a lot of ways. If a gym has let himself go, it can be telling him to snap into a slimmer mentality. If it's a gym who's afraid he's getting too slim and losing some of his bulk, then it prompts him to imagine himself slim, and he's compelled to act to rectify that.
Wow, that was profound. I didn't expect to learn so much about the phrase snap into a slim gym.
I think the meaning is plainly obvious. I have no idea what else you'd possibly consider it meaning.
Oh, yeah. No, it's clearly about a cabal of gyms.
All right, you're finally getting it. That might be the first smart thing I've heard you say, other than, let's invite Apetimus Prime onto the podcast.
I didn't ask. I think you just kind of forced your way in here, and it's your world now, and we all just live in it, Apetimus.
You're darn right. Apetimus out.
Man, Andy, asking a question like how did he get so buff, that was just as detailed and in-depth as I thought it would be.
Yep, it was exactly as coherent as I typically expect Apetimus to be. So we were talking about Beast Wars.
We were talking about Beast Wars. I'm Phil Thomas.
I'm Andy Hunter. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Today, we are discussing Season 1, Episode 22, The Low Road. Rhinox gets infected with a virus that causes him to expel energon, and the Maximals need to get the counter virus to save him. And also themselves, because each time he expels energon, he shoots it in a dangerous blast.
Yeah, a lot of friendly fire in this episode.
Yeah. This is one of the ones that I don't really think about. Like, I don't remember it much. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh, yeah. I feel like this is another one that happened a fair amount in the rotation. Certainly not to the extent of the one where they all went blind. But I was like, oh, yeah, I remember seeing this a few times back in the first run of the show.
Yeah, I guess in retrospect, now that I've watched it a couple of times, I kind of remember it. But when I first started watching it on the rewatch, I did not remember this episode at all.
Yeah, I just remembered Rhinox sneezing energon and then the explosive end of the show, which we will get to. But yeah, I didn't remember that it was all supposedly because of Rattrap and Dinobot's bickering. Yeah, there was a lot that I didn't remember. Let's get into it.
Absolutely.
This one was written by Bob Forward, one of the co-story editors of the show. We've talked a lot about him. And directed by Jay Falconer, who also directed The Trigger Part 1. And overall, I would say, as far as the tone of the episode, this is, I would say, certainly one of the more cartoony episodes.
There was a lot of physical slapstick humor, and you can see so many of the different, what do we want to say, like Warner Brothers tropes. You know, somebody about to fall and they're in midair for a second before they fall. And what is it called when the circle comes in and out to...
Oh, like the camera irising.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when Rhinox is hiccuping and shooting energon, his face is like stretching and squashing in a way that usually the show treats the characters as being more solid. But we'll discuss it all. We begin with Rattrap and Dinobot hacking away at some absurdly fast-growing vines. Like, we see Rattrap chop one, and then another one snakes up immediately. So I have to assume these vines went extinct on Earth around the same time that plant, that projectile launches its seed pod did.
Yeah, these things grow faster than the heads of a hydra.
Mm-hmm. Rattrap is using one of Optimus's curved swords.
Very funny.
Yeah, it's both, a nice touch because one Rattrap doesn't have. Well, I guess we have seen, didn't we once see Rattrap have a little arm blade that he used to like cut Cheetor out of a web or something like that? Or he cut himself out of a web?
Yeah, that makes sense. Was it when they were in the Tarantulas lair?
Maybe. Anyway, this was certainly bigger than that web, and it also makes sense that the animators don't have to create a new art asset. Just say Optimus loaned him one of his swords.
It's funny because it also does let you know just how big that sword is, and I think the flat part of the sword, which is kind of a saber, plays a functional part a few seconds later, and I think it's also funny that Dinobot is using one of his weapons like a weed whacker.
Yes, he's got his spinning tail shield as a weed whacker. I liked that a lot. Rattrap is complaining. Dinobot, however, appreciates the importance of this job because the vines could provide cover for a Predacon ambush, which is quite the turnabout from a couple episodes ago in Dark Voyage. He was really complaining about him being forced to scout for energon. So I guess he can only appreciate menial, unglorious jobs if he can somehow mentally connect it to the idea of combat or tactics.
Yeah, I would buy that. And it does kind of give them some cover, but I also see what you mean. That does feel a little flimsy.
And before we discuss too much more about the scene, I was wondering, where is this? It's not the usual part of the exterior of the ship that we see where the lift that comes out of the bridge leads from, because they're in front of some kind of stone-colored wall. And then when we do see them coming and going from an elevator, it's a much more like industrial looking elevator than the one they usually take. So I couldn't tell actually like where this is. I know it must be like under the Axelon somewhere, but it's not a spot that we usually see.
That's a good question. I guess it's in the back somewhere.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, Dinobot is saying it's important to always be on the alert. That's why this is an important job. And Rattrap takes that as an opportunity to use the sword to bat a bean pod right at Dinobot's butt. which was somehow forceful enough to knock Dinobot over. I guess he was a little unbalanced. He was leaning over.
It's foreshadowing of how beans and bending over will play a significant role in the end of the episode.
Yeah, good point. Here it's a bean going into butt, but perhaps later on it will be the opposite. This, of course, sends Dinobot into a blind rage, and he attempts to murder Rattrap. As we've seen, is his MO when he's annoyed.
He really goes at it in this episode, especially at this moment, too. He really kind of wants to pound Rattrap into the ground.
Yeah, and I don't know, we see him, doesn't he have his sword up against Rattrap's neck at one point in this fight? Yeah, so he's not screwing around. But the Predacon flyers attack. The Maximals can't activate Sentinel because Rattrap and Dinobot are still outside. But I, as the anal retentive stickler to the show's details, noticed, I think we have seen times where they can activate Sentinel, because that's what the whole friend or foe program is about. In Double Dinobot, Dinobot activated Sentinel even though he was outside, and then Sentinel just shot Megatron and ignored him. They don't discuss either the possibility of just activating their shields without activating autocannons, or maybe manually firing their weapons without relying on Sentinel to indiscriminately shoot.
Yeah, I think based on some of our previous conversations, when that came up, I had the same confusion. Wait a minute, they can't, but I thought they could. One of the ways I was trying to reconcile it was maybe there was a point in the season where Sentinel was brought online and could not distinguish. Then they had the friend or foe thing installed, and then after that it could distinguish. And then maybe this episode should have been put earlier in the season to maybe follow that narrative arc or progression. I couldn't actually remember if that's something that did actually happen, but it was kind of silly. They could have used the shield as a much better example. Put the shields up. Oh, we can't put the shields up with Rattrap and Dinobot out there. They have to get in, and then we can raise the shield, something like that.
Yeah, that would have worked. But it forces Rhinox to go outside to give them cover fire. One weird thing, when Rhinox gets up from his seat to go outside, he's holding his gun underhanded. Like the handle is pointing up and the bulk of the gun is underneath his hand. But then when he gets outside and is shooting his guns, they're both regular again. Like he was holding the gun upside down, basically.
Oh, weird.
So he's giving them cover fire, but they continue dicking around. I guess in this case, it's really Dinobot is the one who takes a really long time getting with the program. Rattrap, as we know, is more than ready pretty much always to duck for cover anytime things go south. We thought this was just the three flyers attacking, but no, Tarantulas has snuck up to the scene as well. And he shoots Rhinox with a face hugger device that squirts something into his mouth, which we later realize is a virus. I would imagine the real world reason this is why they did it was because they maybe didn't want to reuse the idea of just something clamping onto his chest from guerrilla warfare. But given Tarantulas' predilection for sucking, I think we know the in-universe reason this virus was administered this way, right?
He's so sick. It's like he wasn't going to get his jollies unless it went down like that.
Yeah.
I prefer to do the sucking myself, but as long as someone's sucking something, I'm happy.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, this is why we've got that disclaimer at the beginning of the show, folks. It's all Tarantulas' fault.
Yeah, it is Tarantulas' fault, isn't it? I guess I was thinking maybe it going down his throat is something that is gastrointestinal as opposed to some other type of viral thing. That doesn't really hold water, though.
Well, later on, we see the Maximals scanning Rhinox to see what's up, and the display they're looking at shows basically like a robot's stomach in Rhinox where all the virus got squirted into. And that really, come on, with guerrilla warfare, Optimus gets injected with a virus, and it's a computer virus because he's a robot, and it just attaches itself and injects him with the virus. We can understand that. We don't need to treat these robots as if they have a robot stomach. We know that, yes, in beast mode they can ingest food, but There's no reason to think that Rhinox would have, coming from his robot mouth, a robot stomach, and then a robot circulatory system that is then pumping that virus throughout his body, as the display also shows.
I completely agree. That was weird.
Yeah. But before that, Tarantulas has shot this at Rhinox, and the Predacons are starting to fly away. Pterosaur says, mission accomplished, and he orders the retreat. So I guess the mission was just to infect a single Maximal with this virus. They didn't bring like 6 shots and we're like, all right, we'll be satisfied if we get 1 or 2. It's like, no, we're going to bring 1 shot. That's all. I guess we don't care who we hit.
Do you think they might have been going for Rhinox?
No, I mean, well, I did later on think if it were any other Maximal who were afflicted with this, I bet Rhinox could have rigged up an energon catching jar or something that they just like sneeze into and it collects the energon and like sends it back into the ship or something. So maybe story reason, that's the reason Rhinox in particular was the one. Or maybe they worked backwards from the nuclear fart at the end and they're like, well, who's the biggest one who can make a big fart? Well, it's got to be the Rhino. Maybe one of the directors or writers or animators had taken a trip to the zoo and seen hippos pooping and how they like fan it around with their tails. And they're like, well, we don't have a hippo in the show, but we have a rhino. Maybe we can do something similar. And then they just reverse engineered the whole episode around that.
I do like the first idea you had, which is that they would be the most fucked if it were Rhinox who got injected with the thing.
Yeah. So anyway, like we said, the Maximals get Rhinox into the CR chamber. They discover what's up with him. But he then sneezes energon and destroys the CR chamber. Not in the like intense way that Optimus destroyed the CR chamber when he busted out of it in guerrilla warfare, but in the cartoon explosion way of you see a blast of light and then just all the walls of the CR chamber fall over.
That was pretty funny. I did get a kick out of that. There were some legitimately funny things that happened in this episode, and I think it was more the situational comedy and not necessarily the Looney Tunes slapstick.
Yeah, I have a point later on that I did note for sure I thought was funny, but yeah, a lot of the more cartoony elements I didn't jive with really. And so they keep sneezing and hiccuping energon. Each time he does, he shoots a blast of it and puts a hole in the base. And so if they don't find a counter virus, he will both destroy the base and deplete his energy reserves and die. Rattrap and Dinobot are sent out to track down Tarantulas for the counter virus and also to get their squabbling under control. As they're hunting down Tarantulas, Dinobot is sniffing him out, showing again why perhaps he would have been a better nose to lead the train than Rhinox back in the one where they all went blind.
Maybe he was inspired to by Rhinox.
Mm-hmm. As he describes smelling tarantulas, Rattrap says, hey, don't be mad at me. I had a Limburger sandwich for lunch, but hey, I'm a rat. And this is another one of those cartoony jokes that I think we are not supposed to like take literally, but of course I did because I try to take the show seriously. Where would they be getting cheese and bread?
This also came up during Beyonce Corner.
Maybe they have 3D food printers or something.
The first comment was, where did they get bread? And cheese? It's like, I don't know.
Dinobot does identify Tarantulas' location, which, one, appears to have just been completely out in the open because the camera just pans to where Dinobot is looking and we just see Tarantula standing there. But then he also like jumps in midair and runs in midair for a minute and then zips away. Again, very Looney Tunes style action there. And he kind of leads them to a trap that he has set up, where he's got a perfectly disguised artificial pit trap that then drops them into a long amusement park slide. And one, they said Tarantulas got hurt when Dinobot shot him earlier, so he can't have gotten far. So wouldn't they still be in Maximal territory? How did Tarantulas build all of this without any of the Maximals ever noticing?
Okay, I have a ton of questions there. One, yes, they're close to the Maximal base, so how could it be there? And two, Black Arachnia says later all the Predacons should converge on Tarantulas' lair. At what point did all the other Predacons learn about the location of Tarantulas' lair? So there's that. And then the third question, which I'm sure you were going to get into, where did he get the parts to create this giant slide?
Yeah. Maybe he's been secretly harvesting energon and he's got a 3D printer powered by energon and he just has never told Megatron that he's got this like part maker or something.
What could I do with this? I could build a ship that could get me back to Cybertron. No, I could make a weapon that could take over Megatron, and then I would control the Predacons. No, I'll create a big, giant slide.
I definitely was reminded of that Treehouse of Horror episode from The Simpsons where Mr. Burns was Dracula. Bart and Lisa are running up the stairs, and then there's a switch or something that says fun slide or something. And Bart's like, well, I know I shouldn't, but when am I going to be here again?
It's so funny. Okay, so it was jogging my memory to something else, but I couldn't remember it. And you just put your finger on it. So thank you for that. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
So anyway, we've got a lot of questions about how this comes to be. But they land in an empty room where Tarantulas jumps out and taunts them, and he calls them minimals.
Oh my God, that's a Scorponok joke.
Yeah, I could even see Pterosaur doing that, maybe. But, Tarantulas is supposed to be the smart one.
Yeah.
And also, the idea that he would get out and taunt them before even shooting, I guess he's just super confident that he can take them 2-on-1 easily.
His personality is not really... This just doesn't feel like we're dealing with Tarantulas because there's just a weird cartoony Looney Tunes way that he's running away from them and he just gets owned over and over again by both Dinobot and Rattrap. And you don't see Tarantulas just get punked like that over and over again. I thought this was just a really like against type episode for Tarantulas' character.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Rattrap and Dinobot don't have to worry about taking on Tarantulas because they happened to have triggered a boulder on the way down, which then flattens Tarantulas. And Rattrap says, "That's gotta hurt," which is your memory like this? I feel like that was like the 90s equivalent of, well, that just happened. You saw that joke everywhere back then?
Oh, yeah. No, I threw that into stolen catchphrase in the Beast Wars bingo. And it's always said like, that's gotta hurt. And that's the way Rattrap said it.
Yeah, in the extremely unempathetic way that only a sociopath would probably actually say in real life. I can buy it in Beast Wars Rattrap saying it, because one, Rattrap is snarky, and two, somebody who was trying to kill me just got flattened by a boulder. I'm not that sad about it.
Yeah, that's fine. We don't think less of Rattrap.
Yeah, but I'm sure like Chandler said that in Friends or something, and in a way that's like, I will judge you.
Oh, that's gotta hurt. I guess that's my Chandler.
I don't think I've got any Friends impressions in my pocket.
You don't? That's frustrating because so nobody told me that life was going to be this way. Oh, you're going to have to kick me off the podcast.
No, Phil, you were on the bubble and now you're in for good. Because I was going to cut that whole Friends sequence, but now I've got to leave it in for that joke.
Thank you for being there for me. You know I'll be there for you too.
So we were talking about Beast Wars.
We were talking about Beast Wars.
Back at the Axelon, Cheetor and Optimus have just literal jumper cables connecting Rhinox to some systems in the base to keep feeding him energon while he keeps discharging. Again, I feel like in a less cartoony episode, those would have been more generic cables or something, and they would be like plugged into something in Rhinox as opposed to just clipped onto his rhino feet.
Yeah, that was strange. It's like, well, we don't have a CR chamber. What can we do? We'll jumpstart him the way we would jumpstart a 1983 Kawasaki KZ550.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the car I was thinking of as well, and our audience too, I'm sure. But while this is happening, Cheetor and Optimus are hunkered down behind a fort made of their rarely seen ballistic shields, so it was nice to see those again. We're always asking, why didn't they bring the ballistic shields into this fight?
Yeah, I didn't realize they were in a second episode. I was actually pretty happy to see them, and I thought it was really funny the way you pan to them and then they just have all the shields set up and the other time they were just like cowering under the table and the table gets blown away. Both of those things were actually legitimately funny to me.
Yeah, I like those. Cheetor's screen makes a noise as if to alert him to something, but then he looks at it and it's just showing that Dinobot and Rattrap still aren't on the scanner. So it's like, alert, no change. Or maybe they didn't immediately drop off the scanners until they had gotten X far underground, and then suddenly the scanners lost them. And so it was chirping to say, hey, I just lost them. I don't know.
Okay, that actually makes sense and narratively would add up. I thought it was more like another Simpsons reference, the everything's okay alarm. This alarm will sound every 5 seconds as long as everything's okay. It will sound every 5 seconds that it does not detect them.
Makes sense. Back with the Predacons, Megatron is getting the report. Yes, we did successfully infect Rhinox, and so he's like, great, you have to find Tarantulas so they can make more. So yeah, again, this is just confirmation. Yes, the plan was to infect a single Maximal with this, which I guess it maybe makes sense that you don't want to put a ton of resources into a strategy that you're not sure will work. But by infecting one of them with the virus, it gives all of the other Maximals time to learn about it and come up with a plan. Whereas instead, had they gotten 7 doses and gotten all the Maximals with them, the Maximals just would have been screwed.
Yeah. Also, why didn't they just, I don't know, practice on one of the Predacons like Scorponok?
Yeah, or let's be real, Waspinator.
Yes, it would definitely have been Waspinator.
Rattrap and Dinobot are dragging Tarantulas along. They feel confident that these caverns must connect to his lair, or his lab, as they keep referring to it in this episode. So maybe he has one off-site lab and then a secret off-site lair. Maybe, who knows? But while they are dragging him around, it just occurred to me, from this point on, they are spending a lot of time in robot mode. And either maybe this far underground, they're shielded from a lot of the ambient excess energon on this planet, or who knows why, but I just noticed, usually when they're out and about, we see them being in beast mode, except for when they have to fight.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really considered that, but maybe energon is lining the planet in like a thin layer, the way peat would, like the top layer of the surface. And then if you get underground,
Yeah.
to the extent that you don't encounter a giant crystal of energon, it shields you.
Yeah. They have another argument, which I found the content of their argument kind of annoying, but I did think it was really funny that while they're arguing, Tarantulas wakes up and threatens them. He's like, die, Maximals! And they just both immediately punch him at the same time.
Teamwork. It's starting to happen. They're starting to gel.
Yeah. Then meanwhile, Black Arachnia, who's in the lab, spots them on the sensor and realizes they're heading to the lab, so she alerts Megatron and the other Predacons. And then meanwhile, the rest of the Maximals, including Tigatron and Airraiser now, are heading to the Predacon base. They're like, we've got to just try something ourselves because we don't know where Rattrap and Dinobot are. And Rhinox joins them. He's like, if I'm going to be blasting energon, I might as well do it at Predacons. But first, he eats some of those wild bean vines to replenish some of his energy. Some of us remember whether or not beans are a musical fruit, and perhaps know where this may be heading.
He really does seem to get a taste for them there.
Yeah.
But that couldn't be problematic, could it?
While the Predacons are searching for the formula to make more of the virus, Black Arachnia finds the counter-virus. She is getting ready to destroy it, but Megatron insists that they hang on to it as a bargaining chip. Or rather, he takes it and says, always good to have a bargaining chip. Yes. And I did find this funny as well. Black Arachnia just goes, why do you always talk to yourself?
I also love the way his eyes shift after she does that in just a really like kind of guilty, self-conscious way. There was another interesting point I wanted to bring up from here, which is that Black Arachnia is able to unpack Tarantulas' actions and thinking and actually find the counter virus, and then she correctly assesses that some of his information is probably encoded, which it is. I think this is maybe the first time in the season where they refer to Tarantulas habitually encoding all of the data he records. And I think it's a little bit of a foreshadowing to the fact that Black Arachnia can start to keep up with Tarantulas a little bit from all of the conniving and technical stuff that he does. And then I think that leads into the end of season 1 and then all of the stuff that happens at the beginning of season 2.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good follow-up to Spider's game, where it showed that Black Arachnia clearly had the skills, but not as much knowledge as Tarantulas. And so here she's starting to build her own, knowledge of his operations and her own instincts. Yeah. Dinobot, Rattrap, and Tarantulas find the entrance to Tarantulas' lab. Most of the Predacons start shooting even before they present themselves as a target, so they're able to just wait until their ammo is done.
It was so stupid. I mean, I laughed, but it was incredibly stupid.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I guess so far they've established that's at the very least in keeping with Inferno's mentality, that he's not a planner at all. Dinobot holds Tarantulas hostage, and Megatron just blows Tarantulas up, which is sort of in keeping with Megatron, but not that in keeping with the idea of, I want to make more of this virus that has been very effective so far.
Yeah, that didn't make a ton of sense, but also was still hilarious. I really did laugh when I saw Tarantulas' head on the ground.
Yeah, I did think it was funny too. But then Rattrap manages to sneak in another way, and he disarms most of the Predacons. And then the Maximals show up by Rhinox sneezing a hole through the wall. But I thought that they were heading for the main Predacon base. How is it that they happened to know to go to Tarantulas' underground lab?
You know what? You're right. I didn't put any of that together. That's a major plot hole. In order to do that, they would have had to have learned a whole bunch of things that they simply never talked about on screen, which, yeah, also doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, or, I don't know, maybe when they got close enough, they had a scanner that then could detect where Dinobot and Rattrap were. Maybe Rhinox just happened to sneeze at that wall, and it turned out oh, good job, we're in the right place. Who knows?
Earlier in the season, I feel like they would have had a scene where, I don't know, they hear the gunfire and they're like, oh, there's gunfire coming from somewhere, and they would run over there. So I think it's fair to point out that they leave that whole thing unanswered.
Yeah, I agree. Usually they are pretty good about explaining how characters know where other characters are, because the logistics of tracking each other has been so big in the show. But also, as the smoke clears, we see the rescuing Maximals kind of in a pose. Airazor is hanging on Optimus's leg. I don't know if you noticed this. I definitely didn't when I first watched the show, but I've seen this screenshot shown online. Why is Airazor doing this? It's because it's an out-of-place homage to a bunch of old classic, especially Frank Frazetta, Conan the Barbarian artwork.
Very nice.
I mean, I can see why animators would want to pay homage to other art, but it's very out of place for Airazor to just, as a non sequitur, be lounging and hanging on Optimus's leg in that moment. So I wish they had picked a different way to try to pay homage to art that they liked.
This is an odd episode. It feels like the Halloween episode of a season where everybody is just not their character and all sorts of things that are not canon happen. And we all just kind of laugh and look the other way whenever the next episode rolls around. It really is quite strange.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Dinobot and Rattrap are hey, everything's under control. Rattrap once again calls Optimus Scrape Ape, which he once did before in Victory. And as we learned that time, Apetimus informed us he's got no beef with that nickname. He's famous for getting out of scrapes.
Oh, that's what that means. I didn't actually understand what it meant.
Well, who knows how Rattrap meant it, but that was how Apetimus apparently interpreted it at the time. So the situation seems under control until Megatron threatens to destroy the counter virus. And he's see, glad I had this bargaining chip. And he orders the Maximals to go into beast mode. But then just stands there while then Rhinox is oh, I've got a tummy ache from all of those beans, and turns around and aims his butt right at Megatron and gives a nuclear fart that's seen from space and wins the day.
Yeah, that was the fart that ended the dinosaurs. That went pretty far, around the Earth and into space. One other thing about the scene before the fart happens. It was just so strange that the Maximals show up and clearly have the upper hand and have disarmed the Predacons. And then they're like, we won. Oh, wait, let's immediately surrender. They're like, oh, we have no choice. I'm like, what do you have them cornered?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think if the tables were turned and it were one of the Predacons who were poisoned and the Maximals were threatening the counter-virus, I think Megatron would happily sacrifice one of his team and then kill all the Maximals. But we know that the Maximals are never going to risk. Well, one, the Maximals don't really, Dinobot notwithstanding, the Maximals don't really pursue these Beast Wars with the intention of, let us not stop until our enemies are just dead. So even if they could have shot them all up and maybe even killed them, that's not really their goal in general. But also, it's just too easy to imagine, like, oh yeah, while they're shooting Megatron up, he destroys the counter-virus too. So I can see the Maximals not being willing to sacrifice Rhinox. They're like, all right, let's surrender for now, and then we'll see how we can negotiate and get this to work out the way we want it to.
Okay, that is thematically more consistent than a lot of things that happen in this episode. It is awfully convenient that the fart, even though it goes into space, it somehow does not destroy the counter-virus.
Oh yeah, for sure. And also it's like, we've all farted, right? You know how it only goes in the direction you're pointing your butt? Optimus waving in front of his face like, oh, crack a window. But all the Maximals are fine. Like you said, the counter-virus is unharmed.
They just happen to find it.
In an episode this cartoony, they might as well have just had somebody light a match at that point. Like, oh, let's get the smell out of here.
I always thought Tarantulas' layers stink, but not this much.
So they retrieve the counter-virus, and then we see them back at the base. The counter-virus, like the virus, is administered orally, and Rhinox is drinking it from a hat on his head through a straw like a novelty beer hat, which, again, I guess was just... this will be a cute image, even if maybe it doesn't make much sense within the world. Rattrap and Dinobot are still bickering, though I guess slightly more good-naturedly. And all of the Predacons are hanging from a desiccated tree, and Megatron comments that this is the most humiliating defeat of his entire career. That line always stood out to me, but turns out I had misremembered it, because I had always wrongly remembered it as, this is by far the most humiliating of my many defeats. But it's a slightly more dignified line than that.
I think you remembered the spirit of it, right?
Yeah. And so that's the low road. Why is it called the low road? Because they ended it with the fart joke, do you think? I mean, I guess Rattrap and Dinobot do walk in like an underground road for a lot of the episode.
They really should have called this the low brow.
Yeah. Anything else before we move on to Beast Wars Bingo?
You did mention that when Rhinox gets shot, you called it a face hugger thing, and just calling out explicitly that that's a reference to Alien. When they're going down the slide, they're being chased by a giant boulder, and that's reminiscent of not only Looney Tunes, but also Indiana Jones, which I think is also something that is referenced in multiple episodes.
Yeah.
When the Preds suddenly come in with Inferno, they're just sort of coming in, attacking out of the blue from really far away and like declaring that they're attacking from really far away. I was just trying to think of the backstory that prompted them to attack in that way. They're just like, what do you want to do today? I don't know. Feel like rushing the Maximal base? Yeah. Sounds good. All right.
Yeah, and they really got lucky that Rattrap and Dinobot were there and they couldn't turn on Sentinel, because it seems to me like those three Predacons would have been pretty easy to just get picked out of the air by Sentinel.
Yeah, this would have been a very short episode otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Shall we play some Beast Wars Bingo?
Absolutely. For Beast Wars Bingo moments, Bullet Train, Rattrap and Dinobot go down a giant slide being chased by a boulder, which is close. It's not truly a Bullet Train moment, but it's the closest we would get in this episode.
Yeah.
Hanging precariously, there's a Looney Tunes moment briefly where the ground gives way under them and they're hanging in midair, suspended before they fall. There is no animal looking to the sky. There's no Optimus body horror moment, but there is a Megatron colossal body horror moment when he gets farted on. Inconsistent weapon power, take your pick. I don't know. like any shot that was fired in this episode, you might as well just point at that.
Oh, yeah. And also, even like Rhinox is discharging all this energon that is strong enough to blast holes in their base and stuff. And he's got, plenty of energon in him to do that over and over and over again. How much power and energon does it take to run them? Or I don't know, I guess any of their guns could do that too. And their guns are clearly powered by their bodies. So I guess it makes sense that they run on enough energon to shoot a bunch. But maybe it shows just why they're always so desperate for energon.
Because of just the density of energon that it takes to power any one of them for any given amount of time.
Yeah.
That is a good point. Inconsistent weapon power, giant fart. I think you're going to like this one. Stolen catchphrase. Pterosaur says, mission accomplished. George W. Bush later quotes Pterosaur on the deck of an aircraft carrier when he prematurely declares that this phase of the war in Iraq and the war on terror is over.
Good thing the American government never made any mistakes like that again.
No, never. Not even recently. I don't think anybody is prematurely declared dead. Fiance corner, as I mentioned before, there were many beefs taken with the cheese and Limburger sandwich, especially because the status of sourdough bread is a very big topic in this household. Is there sourdough bread? How much of it is there? Is it sliced? Are you at Whole Foods? And can you get more of it?
Is there sourdough bread? Why aren't you getting the sourdough bread? Why aren't you getting it now? And so on. So please.
So please. Very good. The other Fiance Corner question, where do they get bullets from? Which is an interesting question. There was reconciling of the energy weapons, but when you look at all of the spent shell casings from Rhinox's chain guns, seems like a natural question. I guess they get them from the bottom of the ship somewhere.
Yeah, I assume that their bodies are able to convert energon into matter to at least small extents. I mean, we know that they can enter beast mode and have limited self-repairs happen, which I assume couldn't happen if they don't have nanobots that can make parts to replace parts that are broken. So it's to me not too long a walk to then say, yeah, and Rhinox's body can manufacture bullets to fill his gun up with while it's stored inside him. That said, yeah, I would love if the show actually said these things and said we've had to come up with our own explanations.
Is a biological phenomenon that I think could back up what you're saying. You know, there's some predators and dinosaurs and reptiles that just have infinite teeth, like sharks. Sharks are always just constantly growing and shedding teeth. You could make some sort of argument that there's a mechanism in play like that here.
Yeah.
So that was Fiance Corner. Would you like to play Maximize versus Terrorize?
Yeah.
How many times was Maximize said?
I am going to say, I don't remember it being said any time. I'm going to guess 0. I mean, I know there definitely were times where they switched back and forth, beast mode and robot mode. But I don't remember Rhinox saying Maximize or beast mode any of the times he was going back and forth. I don't remember Dinobot or Rattrap saying Maximize when they spotted Tarantulas, so I'm going to guess 0.
You are correct.
Whoa.
Or at least that's what I had.
Whoa.
I watched it a number of times, and I did a pass specifically to listen in for Maximize. I could not find it in the episode, so good job by you. How many times was Terrorize said in the episode?
So when the flyers come in, they're all already in robot mode shooting. When Tarantulas first shows up, he's in robot mode. I know Megatron initially shows up in beast mode, but then I think he's just robot mode later, and I don't think we see him change. So I'm gonna guess there's also 0 terrorizes in this episode.
You're close. I can confirm there is at least 1 Terrorize that is said, and it is said by Tarantulas very quickly towards the beginning of the episode during one of the battles.
Oh, I guess maybe he shows up as a spider and then transforms and then shoots Rhinox and makes Rhinox suck his juices.
Yes, that is when it is said. Good job by you.
Okay. Yeah, some low numbers for that one.
Yeah, I know. Low numbers for the low road.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so all of this makes me wonder. That was quite the climactic conclusion of the episode. And, you know, you and I had our quibbles with, was it too lowbrow or not? I'm almost afraid to ask, what do you think about Apetimus? You think he's ever let one rip like that? What is the Apetimus threat level of that nuclear fart?
Somebody talking about Apetimus over here?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Apetimus. Good to see you again. There's an episode of Beast Wars where Rhinox at the end makes a giant energon fart that beats all the Predacons. You're such a strong guy. Earlier, you were talking about how buff you are. Have you ever produced such an immensely powerful piece of flatulence?
You're asking, have I ever had something go down like Rhinox? Oh, no, sir. You won't catch me ripping a huge energon fart. I ain't no irregular orangutan. I ain't the ape who let one escape. I'm on the straight and narrow, son. I'm not just Apetimus Prime. Just call me On Time Prime. And how do I achieve it? Shit. Let's just say I'm from a little planet called Fibertron.
Nice. Apetimus Prime, everybody.
Thank you, brother. Make sure to get plenty of fiber in your diet. Apetimus out.
Why don't we end on the same highbrow note as the Low Road did? Thank you all for listening. Please subscribe, rate the podcast wherever you get it, spread the word. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube. Feel free to subscribe to us there. You can reach out to us at beastwarstalk@gmail.com, especially if you have a question for Apetimus, and he will answer it on the show. Until next time, I'm Andy Hunter.
I'm Phil Thomas.
And now we have talked about Beast Wars.